All right, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome once again. So today's lesson was on descriptive modeling and accuracies, lesson 1.5. Please make sure you guys have your books turned to page 33 and your interactive notebooks out, and of course, your bell work. So what this lesson entailed is basically you going through word problems and understanding what the best route to go. Sometimes when it's asked you of a couple different variables, it's kind of just for you to understand the best way you should approach word problems, okay? As we go forward throughout the school year, ladies and gentlemen, we will be doing some what's called drill and practice, where it's some equations. But for majority of the time within my classroom, we're going to do a lot of word problems, okay? A lot of simple solving. The reason is in real life, you don't deal with equations, you deal with usually a problem, okay? And so I want to develop your guys' critical thinking skills rapidly. All right, so today in 1.5, what we talked about is in bell work. Please make sure you find a sheet, a corner, you put in lesson 1.5 at the top, and then you start from here. Please use this time wisely and work on these. All right, so like I said before, these are for your benefit, okay? It's the repeat model of 12, 24/7, okay? When I teach you something, then if I reiterate it within the next 18, but I say 12 minutes, it's great. And then if I repeat the next day, you'll learn it faster. And then within the next 7 days, you usually have about an 80% retention of information. And so that way you guys remember this stuff. Remember, my goal actually is for you to create sometimes for you guys a sense of deja vu, where when you're taking an assessment, you'll be able to say to me, you'll be able to look at it and say, I think I've seen this and I think I know how I can do it. Do I expect you to remember everything? No. But I want you to be able to experience the small things and realize that from there. So distribution, you take the 6 and you multiply it into here and into here. So 6 times 4, 24x plus 30. That's it. Okay, on this one here, you would go, the 9's on the opposite side, but it doesn't really matter. Multiply it on there. So 2 times 9 is 18d plus 9 times 7 is 56. Yep, okay. And then evaluate this as well. This would be 5z minus, 15 plus 4z. Now, can you combine these two together? Yes, you can. 5 plus 4 is 9. So this equals out to be 9z minus 15. Remember, hopefully you guys got that. And if you didn't, come talk to me and I can teach you up. And we can have a little bit of a tutoring powwow. Or I can give you some additional skill practice to work on. Won't be much, but remember, it's to help you guys. Okay, model of mathematics, that's what we're working on today. These are the definitions that we're doing, okay? Talks about real numbers. That's what NQ stands for. All right. You use numbers to model a real-world situation. Now what we're going to do is define appropriate quantities for descriptive modeling and choose appropriate levels of accuracy. For example, on a ruler, ladies and gentlemen, you have usually an inch, then you have ½ inch, and then you even have the little quarter inches on there, or an 1/8 of an inch. So that's what we're asking. If you were to measure my room, would you want to measure from left to right? Would you want to measure it in inches or feet? Well, obviously you want to measure it in feet, okay? So it's the same kind of concept, okay? So if you look on page 33, you guys should see these, this example of what a metric is, debt to income ratio, and accuracy. That's the definitions we're learning today. So debt to income ratio. This applies to a lot of people, especially in credit scores. I've had this done to me quite a bit. Okay, Ryan is applying for a home loan. Now this particular, I didn't like the slides that were presented to this lesson, so I'm actually pulling everything out of the book. Okay, so if you go to page 33 and look, you should see this exact example up there. Okay, talks about his debt to income ratio. And what we're looking for is from the National Road Bank. Okay, they want a ratio of 0.36 or less. And then when he goes to, let me pick blue, when he goes to New Savings Bank, okay, his ratio has to be 0.28 or less. So you're looking at two different ones, okay? So National Road Bank, they're looking at 0.36 or less. So what do? Is you take his monthly expenses, all right, which are up here, and then you would divide it by his income, which is right here, and then you get your projected debt to income ratio. So because the ratio is less than 0.36, he does qualify for a loan. What that means is when you're going into a bank, and this is a real world situation, it happens all the time, okay? If it looks like you're not making, a bank is not gonna give you money if it doesn't look like you can pay it back, Okay, that's what this debt to income ratio is looking at. Now, determine whether he qualifies for a home loan at New Savings Bank. When he does New Savings Bank, their rate is a lot lower, 0.28. But when he does the qualifications here, okay, the monthly mortgage, all right, this one's changing because it's looking at his projected monthly mortgage. All right, their ratio is different. To his income, that's his ratio, so he does not qualify for a loan for New Savings Bank. Each bank and every institution has a different policy. One of them here has monthly expenses, okay? And then this mortgage to income ratio is talking about mortgage, all right? So understand by looking at the problem and breaking it down into pieces, okay? Look for all the money, and how you can add it all together and put it in the problem, all right? So now let's work on this. So what I want you to do is use the income that you had before, okay? So we got monthly expenses of this, okay? Then we have monthly income. So income is this number, okay? And then last but certainly not least, when you read this, mortgage, okay, is this number. All right, so what you want to do now is to determine from the same people, okay, determine whether Luciana qualifies for a home loan at National Road Bank, New Savings Bank, and compare the two matrices, okay? So what I want you guys to do is look at the example above, use the same principles, and we'll go from there. All right, hopefully you guys did this on your own, so let's look at this real quick. So for the National Road Bank, okay, they want expenses over income, okay? So when you do this, all right, your expenses here is going to be $975, all right, over your income of $2,465. Then, ladies and gentlemen, what you want to do is, so sorry I walked away, get your calculator out, okay? So I got 975 divided by 2465. Make sure this gives it to me, and I got a ratio of 0.3955, okay? For the home loan from New Savings, okay, New Savings wants the mortgage payment, right, which is $684, over the expenses of $2465 over your income, sorry. So if you take that into consideration, 684 divided by 2465, check that out, and that comes out to be 2774, well, 8, okay? Do I have to go that far? Not really. So what are you looking for? Compare the results of the two matrices. Could she adjust her so what you want to know is, could she adjust her finances so that she qualifies at both banks? Let's find out. Did she qualify for the first one? Okay, so the first one, you needed an income ratio of what? 0.39 or less to qualify. She did not qualify. She got 0.3 or 3.6 to qualify. She got 3.9. And this one here, you needed 2.77 or less. So technically speaking, she does qualify for 1B. Now, compare the results. Could you adjust the finances? You could adjust the finances on here, but how would you do that? Either one of two ways, right? The first way would be reduce her expenses. So this number would have to go down, maybe to 225, or increase your income, okay? A lot of people actually have to deal with this on a regular basis, especially when you're trying to go for a loan. So that's what you want to make sure you guys do. This is real world. You guys will experience stuff like this, okay? Make sure you understand how to do it. All right, accuracy and measurement, okay? That's what we're going for here. On the book, it says, suppose you measure the width of a laptop screen and recorded the measurement in meters, centimeters, and millimeters. Which measurement would be rounded to the nearest whole number? Well, that would be the smallest amount, which would be what? Millimeters, okay? Which measurement is rounded to the nearest half, tenth, or smaller? And so what you want to do is the measurement in centimeters would be rounded to the nearest half, okay? The measurement in meters is rounded to the nearest tenth, which means, ladies and gentlemen, you would want to, so if your screen, all right, was all the way across, you want to make sure that if it was, say it was, if you're doing it in meters, you'd want to make sure that you go to the nearest 10. So you would want to have a decimal point at the end of it, okay? Determine which measurement is most appropriate. Well, of course, which one's the most reasonable, okay? Usually the most appropriate measurement is the most reasonable for the size of the screen. So in this case, they say centimeters is most appropriate. I would agree with that, because if you guys look at a ruler, okay, you're measuring the screen, which is usually about this big. All right, if you go in millimeters, you're going to be counting a lot of tiny little lines, all right, to get there. Because remember, on a ruler, it's very small. And what you want to do is make sure which one would be the most accurate, though. Okay, that would be the centimeters. Which one would be the most accurate? The most accurate would be the milliliters. Okay, because of course, why? Because it is the smallest. Okay, understand what you're doing when you're doing it. Okay, the most accurate measurement would be millimeters. All right, so guided practice. An area rug has these dimensions. Work on that and answer those questions. All right, an area rug has dimensions given in inches or centimeters. Which of these measurements would be the most accurate? Which of them would be the most accurate? Remember, so here's a ruler you have, okay? Inches and centimeters. Okay, on this ruler, which would be the most accurate? Well, what you want to do is the most accurate would always be the smaller of the two dimensions. So which is smaller, inches or centimeters? Well, it's obvious it would be centimeters. And the reason is because it's smaller, okay? One website indicates the distance to the sun is 150 billion meters. Another website lists the distance as 93 million miles. Determine which unit is more appropriate for measuring the distance to the sun, meters or miles. So which one would you think? You know, that's one big key aspect that I want to make sure you guys understand. All right? What would be in your opinion? Okay? Now, when you're going from here to such a long distance, the most appropriate measurement here would actually be miles. Okay? Because meters is such a small unit. Okay? It'd be like me from, if I were to take an inch marker here, or this ruler. I've heard a saying once before, how would you measure the distance from here to Phoenix? Would you take this ruler, which is a meter stick, or 1 yard, and would you take it and basically just one over here, 1 yard, and just keep doing that? Would you do that the whole way? No, that becomes ridiculous and tedious, and along the way you would mess up. So it's easier when it's a longer distance, you'd want to go miles. So if it's a small, short distance, you always pick the shortest number. If you're going a long way, you want to pick the higher, which is miles, okay? All right, decide where to round. Determine where to round in each situation, okay? Ellen has $13 that he wants to divide among his 6 siblings. When he types in 13 divided by 6, he comes up with the number 2.16666, and it just keeps going on. Where should Ellen round? Explain. Well, you're rounding money, right? If you're rounding money, what are you going to have to do? That's why it says you're going to have to go to the cents, okay? So what's going to happen is somebody's going to get 2 pennies short, or you just cut it off, you give everybody $2.16, and then he has 4 cents left over, okay? Or that's kind of a lane. Oh, that's a lane. Okay, girl. All right, Dante's mother brings him home a dozen cookies. Before she leaves, she eats one and tells Dante to share with his 2 sisters. All right, you type that in. You get 3.6666. So what should you do? Well, after each sibling receives 3 cookies, there are 2 left. All right, you could give each sibling 2/3 of a cookie. You could do that, okay? Now, if he's got that type of cutting skills, that's amazing. But that is one thing you can do it, okay? Eva measures the dimensions of a box at 8.7, 9.52, and 3.6. Multiplies them together to show her volume at 261.72. Where should she round? Okay? You always want to round to the tenths because it's only accurate to the tenths place when one of her measurements. Okay? So what I mean by that is, if your measurements here, okay, if one of them is to a tenth, which this one is, then guess what your measurement has to be? It has to be to a tenth. Okay? Always good to know to remember. All right, so your turn. Guided practice. I believe this is on page 35. Okay? So look at this and go from there. All right, she wants to divide 23. Jessica does 6 ways. Her calculator says 3.8333. Where should she round? Of course, this is money, so where should she round? She should round here at 3.83. Now, what's going to happen is that she's going to want to change it, of course, to a penny, that's where she would round it and make sure, and it would actually, would it work out? Yeah, because this would be 6 times 3, 18, so she'd be short 2 cents, so it would be work perfectly. Miss Harris wants to share two pizzas among 6 people. Her calculator shows 0.3333. Where should she round? Okay. What's ironic about this one is, does anybody know what this is? Repeating 3. This is actually a fraction. That's 1/3. So guess what you can do? You can keep it. You would actually want to go to the tenths. All right, 1.3, 1/3. Okay. So what would happen is you'd give each pizza person 1/3 of the pizza. The measurements of an aquarium are 12.9, 7.67, 4.11. Remember we talked about right here. Okay. Where should the number be rounded? It needs to be rounded right here. So the measurement would be 406.7. Okay. Any questions on that? Please come see me. But since you know these are just 3 digits, okay, like that, and it ends at the tenths, then you need to round it to the tenths. Okay. All right. Appropriate level of accuracy. Okay. What is the appropriate level of accuracy? Each situation determines the appropriate level. Okay. John needs to buy a shade for the window covering shown, but the shades are only available in whole increments. What size shade should he buy to cover the roll entirely? Well, if it's in whole numbers and he's at 27.5, he's going to have to go up to 28. Okay? Tom is buying flea medicine for his dog. The amount of medicine depends on the dog's weight. It's sold in 10-pound increments. How accurate does Tom need to be to buy the correct medicine? Okay? He needs to be accurate within what? 10 pounds. Okay? Pretty common sense. Tyron is building a jet engine. How accurate do you think he needs to be with measurements? He needs to be very accurate with those because it's to 1/1000th of an inch. Being prior military, we actually had a lot of measurements that were within an inch. We'd have what was called a feeler gauge, which was a thin piece of metal that was actually calculated out. And I'm talking to the hundreds of thousands. And you would have to slide it in to make sure it gauged properly. If you were to, what you would do is imagine here's a gap. Now this is a big picture. You'd have a gap about this big. You'd have to take this feeler stick and you slide it in just like that. And then what would happen is if it was too big, then you have to crank the screw down a little bit more to make sure it was engaging properly. Okay? It was a hard calculation to do it sometimes, but when it's something as important as that, you had to make sure you're accurate. All right, last but not least on this one, ladies and gentlemen, work on this guided practice. Matt's table is missing a leg. He needs to cut a piece of wood to replace the leg. How accurate do you think he needs to be in his measurement? I mean, you're going to look at page 36, and when we're talking about this, ladies and gentlemen, how deep do you think he needs to be? Okay, for this exact answer, he would want to have it to the nearest, what? It doesn't give you a measurement, but what's the smallest measurement we have on this ruler? It's actually going to be what? Millimeter. Okay, now you go a millimeter. That's the actual smallest measurement because these increments here are quarters, okay, or 1/8. You could use the 1/8 as well. All right, we are in America. We do not use the metric system. All right, so it could be 1/8 inches as well. When I cut out, I usually 1/8. I don't use millimeters. You're estimating the height of a small child. Which unit of measure should you use? 1 foot, 1 inch, or 1/16 of an inch? You probably want to use 1 inch. Okay. None of us goes to 1/16. 1 foot, you'd be too big. You'd want to use 1 inch. Kurt is measuring the driving distance from one seat to the other. How accurate do you think he needs to be with his measurement? Remember, if you're going from a long place to a long place, you could use either miles or kilometers. Okay? Hopefully you guys understand the scenarios related behind this. So remember, if you're going to precise measurements, you'd be going smallest. If you're going estimating the height of something in the middle, it's the middle number, and a long ways away is when you want to use the bigger number. Okay? So please understand the measurements, because as we keep going with these models, it's going to ask you, and you're going to have to make the determination of what is appropriate in size. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in class.